And I'm gonna go ahead and mute everybody. And then, of course, if you want to say something, just unmute yourself. So should I get started? Yeah.
Sure. Hi, Daisy. Welcome.
Okay, so last week, that way everybody can move on to whatever the rest of their day has in store for them. But thanks for joining us again. Last time we talked about the integrative nutrition plate, and I kind of went through all of these different aspects of primary and secondary food. So just to kind of recap a little bit, sleep is primary food. That's first and foremost, so that everything else runs smoothly. And then the primary foods include relationships, spirituality, career, and physical activity. And those are foods that nourish us, mind, body, and soul. So those are first on the list in terms of priorities. And then we can move to the secondary food, which is what's actually on our plate. So what we're going to do today is an activity that has a silly name. It's called Circle of Life. And I need to come up with a better name for it because it sounds so cheesy, but it's actually a really, really good interactive activity that allows you to look at these primary foods more closely and determine where you might see an imbalance, and then proceed as to however you like to proceed, ideally to find ways to nourish in those areas. So I'm going to go to, let's see, to the circle. I'm going to, hopefully I didn't close that for somebody. Can you all see this? Can everybody see this? Okay, so this is basically what you have in front of you. Hopefully, except in my colors, my company colors, but it's the same exact circle. And if not, it's very easy to draw. So the idea here, and I'd like you to just go along and actually do some of this. You'll have to do some of the more like investigative work on your own later, but I'm going to get you started. And this is actually an activity I do with paying clients. This is the very first thing we do. So I would just ask you to to not share like my copyrighted activity, this particular activity, but it's going to be very helpful for you, and then you can kind of share what to do with others. So the first thing you're going to do is look at the circle. We've got 10 areas of primary food: spirituality, creativity, finances, career, education, health, physical activity, home cooking, home environment, relationships, and social life. And so please use the chat box if you have questions, because I very often get questions about like, well, what if I don't have like an office job per se? So what do I do with career? Well, that's anything that allows you to use, for instance, your education or your creativity. And if that's just something that is not a priority for you, then you can just ignore it and move on. Are there any specific questions about like defining what any of these are just before we get started? Any specific questions? Home environment is one that I often get asked about. That one specifically refers to, I'll give you an example because it'll be easier to understand. I was coaching a college student, and she was in a dorm room with a roommate that always had a like one of those bath and body candles burning day and night, like consistently when she was there. And she had a headache all the time because the fragrance really bothered her. And so for her, her home environment, the environment she was living in, was actually pretty toxic for her, because she couldn't feel well. She didn't feel well all the time. So that was an area that wasn't very nourishing for her, right? We always want our homes to be places of nourishment where we come home and we feel comfortable and our homes don't make us sick, right? So hopefully that example helps you. And also, how the relationship is right next to home environment, because a lot of times what's happening in our relationships can spill over into how things are going in our homes too. So I'll just keep going. And then if you have questions as we go along, just stop me. All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to place a dot. So just a tiny little dot with your pen or pencil in each section, based on how satisfied or nourished you are in that area. So not how accomplished you are. As an example, you might go to yoga 7 times a week. So you're very accomplished in that activity, in that space of your life, but you might not be satisfied. It might not really be fulfilling you. You might be doing it like as a way to burn calories, period. And in that case, it's not very nourishing, right? So if you're at a 0, which is not satisfied at all or not nourished by this area of your life at all, you'll put a dot right here. This is about a 0 right at the tip right here. This is about a 5. And then this is a 10. It's extremely nourishing. You got this. It's filling you up every day. You're not lacking anything. There's no dissatisfaction there. Okay. So each one of those, and you can choose to do it to the right or to the left. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. But I'm going to just be quiet for a minute, and I'm going to let you just kind of rate each of those areas. And I can answer questions here if you have any. So. Everyone good to go? Anyone need a few more minutes? Thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. So what we're getting to here is figuring out where the imbalances are. So what I'd like for you to do now is play connect the dots, literally. I want you to connect your dots, and I'll show you a picture of a completed one just to show you it's really, tell me if you can see this. You're literally connecting the dots. So just connect your dots wherever they are without judgment. It's not going to look like a perfect circle. I've never met anybody who has a perfect circle here, and you probably shouldn't, because when one thing's going really well, another thing might be on the back burner. So that's kind of how life is. So just connect those dots. And you can see here where the imbalances might be. So you don't have this sheet. There's like a little reflection sheet that goes with this that asks some questions. So I'm going to ask you some questions. And you can just use the margins of the paper, or if you have a sheet of paper around you, you can answer it on there. But what are the top 3 areas, looking at your image here, what are the top 3 areas you feel most nourished in right now? So write those down, 1, 2, 3. And if you feel comfortable, maybe share in the chat your top nourished area, if you're comfortable doing that, just so we can kind of see where everybody is.
Dara, we had 2 people just kind of join late.
Okay.
So real quick, I'll do like the fastest recap. So Gabby and Addie, we have our little circle, and she asked us to closest to the center is like 0. Midway is like a 5. All the way out is a 10. And so you place a dot in wherever that pertains to each category based on how fulfilled you feel in each one of those. Okay, so like if you feel super creative, it would go all the way on the outside. If you're not feeling super creative, inside. And then when you guys joined, what she asked us to do is just to connect the dots so you can kind of see your little pattern.
Perfect. Perfect explanation. So how does this relate to nutrition? This relates because a lot of times when we experience things like emotional eating, we can realize by looking at this that the eating doesn't stem from like an actual real hunger for a food, right? It sometimes can stem from an imbalance of these primary foods. So a lot of times when we reach for foods that maybe are not very nourishing, that we feel like we're craving, there's an imbalance or a void in one of these areas. So we listed the top 3 areas where you feel most nourished. Let's see. Relationship, career, and health. That's awesome. Health, joy, and relationship. That's great. So yeah, identify those top 3 areas. And then in which areas do you feel least nourished? So these would be the ones that are closer to the center. Okay, so list those 3, and you don't have to share those with us, but list those 3 just for yourself so you can be aware. Awareness is key here. And so these 3 areas are usually where we're craving the most. It's what we're craving most beyond food. And a lot of times what happens is like now you're aware of what that is, what's missing, where there's a void, but you might not know how to fill that void. So, and that's kind of where health coaching comes in. We kind of explore those areas, but I'm going to help you get started. Once you've figured out where those 3 areas of least satisfaction are, then that's where you would start focusing your attention. Those should be now your priorities, right? You make those your priorities. And I like to tell people to think about the statement, the way you do one thing is the way you do most things. So if you're frustrated in an area of your life and you find yourself kind of like procrastinating, usually you're doing that in all the areas in some way. So being aware of that and then figuring out how to combat whatever it is that's like keeping you stuck or holding you back is really what can help you propel you forward when you're ready to make committed habits a priority. So just as an example, if creativity were really low for me, which personally it is, it's something that I don't make a lot of time for. Here, what I would want to do as a next step is identify 3 actual action steps I can take to start improving that area. So, as an example for my life personally, to enhance creativity, it would be something like coming up with new sequences for yoga classes, right? That's creative for me. Or maybe in order to do that, maybe I need some good music. So coming up with 2 or 3 new playlists to do this. Or I don't know if y'all have heard of bullet journals, but I have gotten into these bullet journals where you like track your habits and things like that. Look it up. It's really cool, but you might get addicted. So I'm warning you. That's something that I got really into that was creative, and I've kind of put that on the back burner. So those are 3 things, 3 action items that I can actually put into use to bring wherever, say, if my level of satisfaction is at a 5, to bring that closer to a 10. And so your goal is always to come back to the center. I say that, come back to the center and figure out where you are. Like when things feel off or you feel stuck or you feel like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Why isn't anything working for me right now? You can come back to the center of this circle and say, what's really happening here? Right? Are my finances really stressing me out? What can I do? What are the action steps I can take today or within the next week or within the next month? Do I need to get a financial advisor? Do I need, if it's health, do I need to find a health coach? A lot of it is just asking for help. We're not very good at asking for help. Relationships, do I need to find a counselor? Again, asking for help. A lot of it is asking for tools that we just don't have access to or available to us in that moment when the satisfaction is low. So, and these are when people say we need to get to the root of things, this is how you get to the root. This is how. What's really going on? If I'm not feeling very spiritual, what am I actually doing to promote spirituality in my life? If you can't list 2 or 3 things, then you need to come up with some actionable items. So what I'm hoping is that you might be able to figure out what's going well and then figure out areas that you might want to improve and use this kind of like a tool to help propel you forward in this. This is why I like this challenge, because it really does address so many of these things here. It addresses health, physical activity, with the food, it addresses the cooking, it addresses relationships and social life because you're in classes together. For those of us who love yoga, it brings so much joy and spirituality and creativity. And it might be helping you save money if you're somebody who's just kind of jumping from fitness program to fitness program. So this is how this relates to yoga. I wanted
Thank
to
you,
make
Dara, for that plug.
well, I just wanted to kind of bring it back since this is a yoga challenge that like you might look at this and say, how does this relate to nutrition or yoga? And it does, because if there's an imbalance here, yoga can probably fill it. And that's not just because I love yoga. That's just, there's something about the practice that also disciplines you in these other areas. Would you agree, Allie? Yeah. What questions do you have? Any questions? Y'all are very quiet today.
Yeah. Yesterday, last time we had a more vocal group.
Yes. Okay, so the homework here would be to let it sit. Oh, I see a question. Let's see. Oh, lots of learning. That's good. That's good stuff. The let it sit. I wouldn't do anything with this information other than those top three and bottom three identifications. Let it sit for a little bit. Maybe think about it, Allie. Maybe you can address it somehow in yoga, in one of the classes, and as an intention of thinking about these areas. And then your homework would be to write some actionable steps. A trainer might tell you to, like, well, what are your goals? You need to have goals. And I'm not against goals, but our habits are what really make us who we are. The things we do consistently over time, and the things that we prioritize and keep doing over and over. So it's good to have goals, but once you've reached a goal, like if you have a weight goal, and once you've reached that, then what? What do you do after that? Do you come up with a new goal? So I kind of like to look at it more from an actionable point of view. What actions can you take and be more consistent with and make them habits? And then just decide, how often you want, be specific like you would be with goals. So decide, when you're going to do that action, where you're going to do that action, how often you're going to do that action, and then find yourself an accountability person that's going to hold you accountable for that. Because that's how those things get done. So that's all I have.
It's awesome.
I hope this was helpful, and I'd be happy to kind of like dig into the specific areas if you have questions. I think Allie mentioned this last time, but I'm happy to provide you with 30 minutes of free coaching time on Zoom if you're in Laredo, and to do some more digging if you need that.
Awesome. I think and like you said, I think it's never a perfect circle, because if you start kind of focusing on another one and honing your skills on that one, then it might make another one that you're really focused on because it's more fun, or it's easier to focus on because it just comes naturally to you. It kind of like fluctuates your circle.
It does, and that's the way life is. It's kind of like when our kids are young, we have different priorities than when they're teenagers, and then when they're college kids. Like, as your life changes, some of these things are going to be more important than others, or they're going to serve you. I don't want to say more important, they're going to serve you better in certain seasons of life than others would, right? And so, or like some of us might just not worry too much about finances, but we really worry about how it's going in our home environment. Do we feel safe? Do we feel healthy? Do we feel, and so it's great if you can knock some of those out. Like, if you're as educated as you want to be in terms of school, like actual school, then you can mark that out. But like, I still think, for me personally, I want to continue being a lifelong learner in other areas, not just like, oh, I got my bachelor's degree, I'm good. So there have been seasons in my life where I learned something new and it has served me. So you decide what's serving you in that season.
Definitely. I think the last thing that I would just observe about my own like interpretation of this is it's hard to put your ego aside, or it helps you realize that some of the things that you're doing or that you're putting your attention towards could be because the way others perceive you. And like, I mean, this is like very personal, but like for my social life, like I don't have necessarily people that I would say that, oh, we go out all the time together as friends, but my social life is fulfilled in a different way. Like you said, every time I go to yoga class and we have this wonderful community. So you may think things have to look a certain way, but if you think about how you want to feel behind each one, it kind of changes what your answer might be.
Yes, because this is I mean, there's not a specific definition for any of these. Like, it'd be like me saying, okay, well, spirituality, well, how Christian are you? Like that's not going to be the same for everyone across the board. Or creativity, does that mean like that you're a good painter? Well, no, it's going to look different for everybody. So that's a good point. I would say don't think about how you're perceived in that area, because I think that's easy to do. Like, well, most people would think I'm pretty educated. Well, but how do you feel? How is that serving you? Like, otherwise we're just stuck in a people pleasing cycle, which the joy area is going to be really low, even if those other areas are high. So that might be the root of the low satisfaction in the joy area. You might ask yourself, like, am I spending too much time pleasing other people? And what do I need to do to stop doing that?
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions, guys? Or anything that you guys observed in your own wheel that you want to share? I know not everybody knows each other, so it's, it's hard to share, but it does help us kind of like connect.
Well, I'll say that I really loved this. I think it's easy to kind of like compartmentalize everything and say like cooking for myself is over here and like taking care of my body is over here. And like the reality is like, yeah, it is just like this circle of care for yourself, right? And, sometimes I can spend more time cooking for myself, or sometimes, I can spend more time meditating and, being able to think about it more holistically. I found to be really helpful. And I liked, sometimes it changes, right? Like sometimes I'm going to be super active. Sometimes I'm going to be super career motivated, but that doesn't make me less of a person, right? Or like less successful in any way. It just changes from time to time. So I really appreciated that. And thank you.
Good. Yeah. It's all connected in some way. Like one usually feeds another, or one might feed a lot of them. So it's good to have this picture. And so when people are actually super hyper focused, because I do have women who will come to me and say, I want a specific meal plan. Tell me, and I struggle with that, because what might be nourishing for me could be someone else's poison, right? So what I'll have them do is fill out like a food diary, and before they even write down anything they eat, they have to fill this out. There's a little miniature one at the top, because more often than not, they're feeling like the food is controlling them. And really it's what's going on in my life. Oh yeah, I've been super isolated. I haven't seen my family or my friends in a long time. And so you'll have this whole left side that's off balance. And that's the root cause of what's happening on your plate. Not always, but the majority of the time you can trace it back to what's actually what's actually happening in your life rather than on your plate. So this is a good thing to kind of keep top of mind, maybe on a desk that you see every day, and just check in with yourself, like, hey, how am I doing in these areas? Where can I ask for help? Like, yesterday I told my husband, speaking of relationships and home environment, like I told him, I said, hey, I'm at a 20% with the parenting. Like, I need you to be the other 80% today, because I don't have it in me. And that's hard for me because I'm not good at asking for help. but I kind of come back to this every morning when I journal, like, where am I? And I realized, like, I'm making everybody's life miserable because I'm at 20%. And if I just ask for a little bit of help in that area, then everybody can be eased a little bit, you know. So it helps you also to figure out where you need help. So yeah, Adi, I see your comment. How do you think this diagram can help you in that regard?
I mean, I think for me to be able to, more accurately like determine where the cause of the stress is, it's usually work related. But like sometimes I'll just be sitting at my computer working and like I'll be snacking, and it's not like necessarily like unhealthy snacks, but like if I eat a ton of cashews, like that's still not necessarily like excess of anything is not necessarily good for you, right? And so just like kind of mindlessly snacking to like keep myself awake, because it can be sometimes boring work, like working on spreadsheets or like, but it's still stressful because you put a number in wrong and like you've destroyed an entire budget. And I think being able to like look at something like this and say, okay, my work is what's stressing me out today, but like I don't necessarily need to be just like snacking all day to like calm myself down, or make myself feel like more centered in what I'm doing to get this done.
And then having some actionable items you can do instead. So like, can you come up with some actionable things you could do instead? Like, would you have the opportunity to like take a 5 or 10 minute walk and meditate?
Try and do little things like I'll get up and do jumping jacks, or like I'll make myself a cup of tea and like put honey in it to make it feel more like a treat. But I think, unfortunately, like my crutch, right, is just like something, crunchy, like you mentioned the last time, to snack on. And even if it's not chips, because I intentionally don't keep them in the house because it would be chips otherwise, but it's still, maybe even like being more thoughtful about like portioning out the snacks that I'm having before I do. That way I'm not just like, well, I have this bag of cashews in front of me, so I'm just gonna like every couple of minutes eat one, and before I know it, like the bag is gone.
Yeah.
But
And that's actually something that I posted that very thing on my Instagram recently about when I get home with anything that's in a package, like that's like that, chips or cookies, or I immediately put them in serving sized bags and I get rid of all the packaging. Well, for one, because I don't like to have all the packages all over my pantry, but it helps you if you just grab that one serving size. You have to actually go back again to grab another one, if you want it bad enough. So that's a good plan. That's a good actionable item. Those are the types of actionable things you can have listed for each area so that you already have the tools. You just refer to them when you need them.
I
They're
think
there.
that's huge. I don't know if you guys caught what she said, but I watched the video, and basically like if she buys a big bag of chips and it says that it's 7 servings, she puts them in mini containers so that they're already like that. So for her daughter's lunchbox, and for her, like if she's out and about, she just has that 1 serving size. And then, like you said, not necessarily to guilt yourself into it, but it's like, oh, I already ate the 1 serving, I'm going back for another one. Like you think twice before you do it, because hey, maybe I'm full. Like, do I really need more?
Mhm. Yeah, and I have to make the walk to the pantry to get another one. So, which is fine, I mean, like if that's what you need or that's what you want in that moment, then, it's not good or bad. It's just it's a way to deter us from overdoing it and then feeling bad and starting that guilt cycle. It's a way to stop it in its tracks. So Let's see. Okay. I don't see any other questions, I don't think. Any other questions? And of course, you can email me, text me, whatever you need to do. Allie has all my information, so. Yay.
Yay, awesome. Thank you, Dara. This is super nice. Very helpful.
And if you all need copies, PDFs, whatever of these things, just let me know.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Nice talking to you guys again. I guess I'm gonna hop on to listen on Friday, so I'll see you then.
Thanks, Dara. Have a good day.
Okay, see you all later.